Welcome to this Sunday's Gospel Reflection. Well, the first lesson for anyone who is learning first aid is stopping bleeding from an open wound. Why? Because blood means life, and losing it means death. The Canaanite woman in today's Gospel was constantly losing blood. It's a poignant and painful image. The story speaks of a woman who, instead of life, was giving birth to death. Is not this a tragic and a terrible image of humanity, where it bleeds itself to death, bringing forth death rather than life? We are constantly flooded with news of bloodshed, isn't it? Murders, wars, terrorist attacks, wanton destruction of life, genocides, animal cruelty and nature. Well, the list never ends. The whole planet seems to be oozing blood all over and giving birth to death rather than life. Isn't this humanity at its worst? Today's gospel seems macabre, isn't it? And it does not spare us even greater pain. It is not only a mature woman who is unable to give life, but it is also a 12-year-old young girl coming out of puberty, whose hopes of becoming a mother are nipped in the bud because she's dying, just as she is reaching the age when she can become a mother and give life. The symbolic meaning of all this is there hope for life to survive? Is there hope for humanity to survive if it is bleeding to its own death? The doctors, they are helpless. Not only they failed to cure the woman, they also took all her money. We mean no disrespect to the doctors, but in a very strong way, Marx is saying that all human remedies are helpless. And they failed both the adult woman and the adolescent mother-to-be. In other terms, life does not stand a chance because of this failure of humanity. And is not this our story also? The young die early, unable to give life. The grown-ups, they are sterile, unable to give life. Humanity seems to have so little hope and no future. And yet, how can we blame ourselves when we see that human science and knowledge, human power, politics, economics, even religious traditions have failed humanity? Humanity has failed to save itself by human means. Is this the end of the world? Is this a tragic and disheartening scenario? What and who can save humanity? That is the big question of today's gospel. The people, they turn to Jesus. The bleeding woman, she turns to Jesus. The distressed father of the dying daughter turns to Jesus. The crowds not only followed but pressed on Jesus. The disciples must have felt very important, seeing their master being so popular with those crowds. Which reminds me of the time when they were so shocked that the same crowd turned away and abandoned Jesus, their master, because of his hard and unpopular teachings. More precisely, they were more shocked that Jesus was asking that they drink his own blood and eat his own body. On that occasion, the disciples panicked and wanted Jesus not to scare the crowds away with his hard teachings. Their self importance took a big blow, but Jesus challenged them. Do you want to leave me also? To which the rash but loving Peter, in his typical shallowness and childlike spontaneity, replied, to whom can we go, Master? You have the word of life. He believed that Jesus was the one, the only source of life for humanity. Let us have a look at our poor humanity today. Is it indeed dying? Is it losing its ability to give life? Is selfishness destroying humanity? Are our science, our politics, our economies and religions still capable of giving life? Or are they just destroying life? Is our rat race for money and comfort giving life or destroying it? Is our planet still a home for the living, or is it fast becoming a graveyard for the dead? Because of climate change, abuse of natural resources, discriminations, inequalities between human beings. If even babies are not safe within the wombs of their mothers, how can grown ups be safe in the company of one another? Is humanity doomed to self destruct, or is there still hope? Everything depends on just one thing. Are we willing to push through the pressing crowds around us, to trustfully touch Jesus in a humble, silent, confident, and loving way, like the bleeding woman? However hesitant and insecure that touch may be, it is enough for Jesus to stop and ask, who touched me? We can press on Jesus, or we can abandon him as the crowds did. But he continues on his way. But when we touch him in a personal, faith-filled, and loving way, it is not just his cloak that we are touching. We are touching his heart. And when that happens, a second birth, a second creation happens within us. His own life flows deeply into us, heals, transforms us. So instead of life oozing out of our wounds, real life flows back into our souls and bodies right from his open heart. Jesus never heals a crowd. He always heals individual persons like you and like me. A touch becomes truly transforming if it is a heart to heart touch and not just a body to body touch. Only that kind of touch heals. This is what the world refuses to understand and to accept. The world loves crowds. Jesus loves you, loves me, everyone, for his or her own individual sake. You see, we have got drunk with so-called progress. We build roads, develop sophisticated technology, impressive means of communication, miraculous medicines, mega businesses that churn out money. And yet, isn't it true that life is still oozing out of our souls? What will save us is not money, not more power, not more so called development. What will save us is the ability to touch the person of Jesus in one another. What is killing humanity is not hunger, it's not poverty, it's not sickness. What is killing us and our planet is selfishness and self centeredness. Like the bleeding woman and Jairus' daughter, old and young, we are all on our deathbed when we are unable or refuse to give life. It is only Jesus who is and can be the source of real life. Only He can save us and restore our ability to receive and to give life. Let us, with that faith filled woman, but bleeding to death, let us push through the crowded space of our materialistic, power hungry, and pleasure driven societies to reach out to Him who is life. Let us touch the hem of His cloak to allow His love to flow into our dying hearts. Let us bring Him to our young who are also dying even before discovering the joy of giving life. No, we need not despair from the fate of humanity. Do not be afraid. Just have faith, Jesus said to the distressed father, Jairus. If we allow Him to heal our ability to give life, as He did with the bleeding adult woman, He will also raise from death the innocent child within us. Even in our despair and loss of hope, let us open our hearts to Jesus. Allow Him to do in us what He did with Jairus' daughter, with the bleeding woman. Let Him take us by the hand and say to us too, Talita, cum, which means, little girl, I say to you, arise. These words are not just a show of the power of Jesus. They are the gift of Him who, out of love for us, allowed Himself to bleed to death to give us life. May we too stop bleeding death and let us start bleeding life. God bless you and thank you.